Welcome into week 5 of the Bobcast, the weekly coaches show from Frostburg State University. I'm Dan Wallace with you, and this week we start with women's head soccer coach Brian Parker. Coach, 2 games for you this week, 2 draws, Gettysburg and St. Mary's, and we start with that Gettysburg game. A 1-1 draw, a game that Gettysburg found a way to get an equalizer late in regulation, but a Gettysburg team that you played last year as well, and Gettysburg got the better of you. So I think you have to look at it and say you saw some improvement from last year's game.
Sure, Gettysburg's very good. They've always got quality players, and I like the job that Matt Garrett does there. I think the fact is, when you get your nose ahead in the game of soccer and get that goal, you certainly would expect to hang in there and get the result. I think letting someone come back on you is always a difficult outcome. But it's an ebb and flow, as we all know about soccer. We played 110 minutes and probably were very good for 60, 70 minutes. And then Gettysburg got themselves in the game, got the equalizer, and then, was very good in overtime. And at the end of the day, we were sort of fortunate to weather the storm. I think they have 4 or 5 corner kicks in the overtime. So overall, I mean, if you were to compare last year to this year, obviously that's a favorable result for us. But I think it's, I think it's one we probably think that we let get away against a team that I think was pretty comparable to us in overall talent.
But a good test for you nonetheless in non-conference, splitting up the conference play once you go from Wesley at the end of last week to St. Mary's this week. Is it strange to go into that sort of break from conference play? You get started, you get going, and then all of a sudden you're back in non-conference. It's a not much of a different mindset. It's still a game, but then you have to find a way to get yourself back into it again for conference play.
Our approach is pretty similar game to game. Every game is important. The reason this game is important, first and foremost, is because it's your next game. It's the next chance we have to prove what progress we've made and prove how good we are. Obviously, it doesn't help us in the standings per se because it's a non-conference game. But we don't have the fortune of condensing all of the conference games toward in the end of the season. So Gettysburg gets wedged in there, and it was a fantastic preparation for the weekend game with St. Mary's for sure. So, they're a little different, but I think as soon as you start weighing one game differently than another, I think you get in trouble. I think we just want to have the same approach, play our best players, play to win, and make sure that we are really a little bit better every time we play, regardless of what you call the opponent or what kind of game it is.
Now let's talk about the St. Mary's game over the weekend. And to me, watching that game, it seemed to be a bit of an odd game. It didn't really seem like you guys held a majority of the possession in that game, never able to break through, but it never seemed like the game as a whole found its rhythm. You had the opportunities. Both teams had the opportunities. St. Mary's had quite a few late on. As a coach standing on the sideline, how do you judge that game? It's a game against a team that you played twice last year and won one, lost one, a team that you'd have to think is very comparable skill-wise to what your girls have.
Yeah, it was not the scoring juggernauts of the CAC, I would say, Frostburg and St. Mary's, at least not this particular year. Obviously, they had an All-American for the last 4 or 5 seasons, really, who was a difference maker. I think, it was, there's a little bit of patience you need to have as a team, and they're combative and physical, and they match up well. They have athletes. I don't think either team really executed in the final third and created the kind of offense that their coaches would have liked for sure. That's certainly true in our case. But we did have a lot of possession. We did move the ball. We did make them chase a lot in the game, and there were large chunks of the game where we were able to open them up and get chances, and I think get really good quality chances. I think on a different day we'd probably put a couple of those in, but St. Mary's held serve and hung in there and defended well. They certainly had their chances and had a couple late corners. So, a very good, combative, pretty equal CAC contest. And again, you might say another result that we've turned from last year, but I think the bottom line is we shut out a good conference opponent that is like us in terms of overall quality, and that's certainly an accomplishment.
Now, a couple players that I want to talk about with your girls this week. I want to talk about a couple of the transfers that came into the program this year, and let's start with Haley Turney. And she really seemed to find her stride and had a very good game against Gettysburg, a player that has a lot of pace on playing primarily on that right side for you guys. And a player that I think is fit well into that top three for you guys when you look at your typical starters with her, Ferris, and Shahady, and it seems like they've started to find a little bit of chemistry up there.
Well, Turney is a bright, cheerful, likable kid for sure. Very bubbly personality, aims to please, very coachable. I think trying to get her to slow down almost in her mind and just think through passing sequences and ways to beat opponents has been a little bit of a challenge. But again, the athleticism, as you stated, and her pace is what makes a difference for her. I think there's a comfort level that she's reaching with our team, and that's been awesome. So I'm happy to have her contribute, and she's different than other players. So obviously we have different players with different skill sets, and when we make changes, we can kind of take advantage of some opportunities in matchups as we go through the match. But certainly her athleticism has been the difference for her.
The other transfer that came in that's now started to really have an impact is Emily Faustin. She gets the second half of action against Gettysburg, has a very good second half, and overtime against the Bullets, then gets her first Frostburg start on Saturday, and she made some massive saves for you guys late in regulation. She stopped a header that, diving down, I believe it was to her right, that would have given St. Mary's the lead, and then she tips a bullet over the bar in the second half of overtime to keep the game level again. And it seems like now you have a good complement of two keepers that you can really trust.
The competition between them has been terrific, and Jenny had a little bit of a thigh injury and has had to take a few days off, but I think she'll be back and competing this week. But I think we sometimes forget all of these girls have spent literally years and years training and playing and preparing. A lot of them started playing at age 6, 7, 8 years old, and so they get an opportunity to play in a competitive college environment, and it really should be the highlight of their careers. And when someone like Emily Faust gets an opportunity to start a college game and plays at a high level, it's very rewarding for her and for the staff and the teammates and everyone associated with it. So you never know always when those opportunities are going to come. Sometimes they're not your making, when you only play one keeper at a time, and so if one's not playing, the other one's playing, and so she got the call and she made the best of it, and bless her for it. I think she should be happy, and we're happy with the outcome. But of course, every game is different, and we certainly aren't going to take any breaks. And off we go. Another good week of conference games.
And let's talk about those conference games now. And we start at midweek with Mary Washington coming here. Then you get the long trip down to Christopher Newport over the weekend. Let's start with the Mary Washington game. A tough opponent coming to Frostburg. What do you expect to see out of the Eagles come Wednesday night?
Mary Wash is always organized, always athletic. Obviously has skillful players. They're right in that middle group in the conference. So I think everyone knows CNU is sort of lights out this year, but I think this game with St. Mary's and then Mary Wash and then York and Salisbury, everyone's going to be battling for position in the conference tournament and trying to win a home game or two perhaps. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a battle. I mean, both teams will be very well prepared, and I wouldn't bet a dime on college women's soccer at any level, to be honest with you, but we'll be as prepared as we can be, and I think we'll certainly present them with some challenges, and should be a fun Wednesday night.
So then the long trip down on Saturday to Christopher Newport, and you mentioned they've been lights out. They were the number one pick in the preseason coaches poll. They won the conference last year. They've been the perennial favorite in this conference for years now at this point. What do you have to do to go down to Christopher Newport Saturday night and come away with a good result?
Clearly be a very good defensive team, and it's one of those games where the longer it goes and the longer the score remains down, or if they're off the board, the more likely we can spring a result and do something. We've been a thorn in their side for a few years now, and we love that. I think it would be nice to do that again this weekend. So we'll see how it goes. I think everyone in our conference knows the odds are you're going to play CNU twice if you want to get to the NCAA tournament and win our conference. So I think you can have a little fun. I think you can try some things and maybe throw a few surprises at them and, try to stay in the game. I think it's going to be a challenge for us. But, I think we're as close as anybody is to them in the conference, I think, in terms of talent and athleticism. And obviously this should be another fun weekend.
All right, Coach. Well, best of luck to you throughout the week, and we'll talk to you again next weekend.
Thanks very much.
I'm joined now by field hockey head coach Caitlin Borman. Coach, A little bit of a tough week for you guys this past weekend. You meet Juniata midweek. It was a tough matchup against a very, very good Juniata squad. You get St. Mary's and Shenandoah over the weekend, back-to-back days. Let's start by talking about that midweek Juniata game. It's hard to really to put into words what was going on with that game, but can you take anything away? Can you guys learn anything from the loss to Juniata over the week?
Quite honestly, we just weren't playing like ourselves at all that game, and the girls knew it directly after the game. They went into the locker room afterwards and just kind of talked things out for a little bit and decided that, the next day of practice they were going to come out a new team, and they did just that. The practice the next day was fantastic, and I think that kind of showed moving into the games that we had this weekend.
And the games over the weekend were much better against two very, very good opponents. And it seemed to me, we'll kind of put these two games together, a 3-1 loss to St. Mary's, a 2-0 loss to Shenandoah, but it seemed like you guys really controlled the way the game was played both days. I mean, you had about a 15-minute span against St. Mary's where you had penalty corner after penalty corner after penalty corner and had possession, but you just couldn't find the back of the net. It really seemed like you guys were able to dictate the pace of both games, just couldn't find a way to come out on top.
Yeah, and that was kind of the message after both games is that we did a really excellent job of doing the hard part. We controlled the game. We were moving the ball around pressure. We were earning the corners that we needed to earn. We were getting the offensive opportunities. We just weren't putting the ball in the goal, which is the frustrating part. And I've kind of told the girls, like, I know this is frustrating, but it's so frustrating because I know how great we can be. All we need to do now is just put the ball in the cage.
So what's the answer? Where does it come from? I mean, you've had a lot of your goal scoring come from Holly Van Wee. Molly Pickard had herself a good weekend. Other than finding the back of the net, she had a ton of shots on goal. Just couldn't find a way to put it home. Sam Coffey's looked really good up top as a freshman, and then you have Gabby Rahuba sitting right behind them, who's provided a lot of offense. Her pace is phenomenal. One of the quickest players on the field. What becomes the answer?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought it up. Molly Pickard did a fantastic job. She's really moving the ball with speed a lot more, which is something she wasn't doing before, and I think that just speaks to her confidence that she's been having in herself. But yeah, the rest of our forwards are doing a great job. It's just when we get inside the circle, we need to get into the what we've been calling them the hot spots, so our opposite post, the pads, and the near side posts, and we just need to get the ball going towards cage. I think we haven't really been doing the little fundamental things to be able to get good solid shots off, and that's something we're going to visit and practice. We have off today, but on Tuesday.
So over the weekend, you have two games back-to-back days. One being a 1:30 start, which really was supposed to be a 1 o'clock start,
Yeah.
turns into a 1:30. A 3 o'clock start then on Sunday. How difficult is it for you guys to turn around that quickly? You're not used to that back-to-back days. At least they're both at home, but how difficult is that to play one afternoon and turn around 24 hours later and play again?
Yeah, it is. It was a little scary coming into the Shenandoah game because I knew we had played such a great game against St. Mary's. I was a little worried we were going to come out lethargic against Shenandoah, but again, we really didn't. We controlled, I would I would argue to say about 75 to 80% of that game. So, yeah, I was proud of the way that they were able to just come out and play very hard both of those games.
Now, your two games this upcoming week are a non-conference game, a second consecutive non-conference game against Washington and Jefferson. Then you make the long trip down to Salisbury for a Sunday game rather than a Saturday game. Let's start with Washington and Jefferson. And my first question there is you're playing back-to-back non-conference games after starting CAC play. The real meat of the schedule, the real importance of the schedule comes in conference play when you look at seeding for the tournament and national ranking and everything like that. How difficult is it mindset wise to go from knowing that you're playing a conference game with St. Mary's, then back to back non-conference games, then to get back into that mindset of these are the games we absolutely need when it comes to conference again?
Yeah, I think it's nice to have these non-conference games to make the adjustments we need to make for our conference games. but to get back in the mindset of CAC play, it really just stems from the upperclassmen kind of telling the freshmen the importance of the CAC play. And, you know, we always play Salisbury very tough, regardless of how high they're ranked. So I'm very excited. I think the girls kind of saw that Salisbury lost to CNU this past weekend, so I think they see them as you know vulnerable. So hopefully we can kind of take it to them.
So Washington and Jefferson on Wednesday. What do you expect to see from your girls against the Presidents?
Yeah. So hopefully we make those adjustments that we need to make inside our attacking circle and just stay strong throughout the midfield and defensive ends. We need to make some adjustments on our defensive penalty corners as well, but overall defensively we've been playing pretty solid. So hopefully we just stay up in those spots and tweak the little things that we need to tweak.
And then, of course, Sunday it is Salisbury, the big rivalry game. Have you heard anything from your girls yet? Because you always know as an athlete that when there's a natural hatred between two teams, that players have a tendency to get up for those games. What's the excitement level for your girls going down to Salisbury on Sunday?
They always play Salisbury very tough. Last year, Salisbury was ranked in the top 5, and they only lost 2-0. I know in the past when I was here in 2014, again, Salisbury was ranked very high, and we held them scoreless to a half. So, we always play them very, very tough, and I'm excited for that game.
Well, Caitlin, thanks for your time once again, and best of luck to you in the week.
Thank you.
I'm joined now by head football coach Delane Fitzgerald. And, I'm not even going to ask you a question this week. I'm going to let you get your jabs in first. Go ahead before we even start.
I have nothing funny this week. Nothing. My 7-year-old told me a couple jokes this weekend.
Yeah, let's go. Come on.
My 7-year-old's Afton. Got to spend a weekend with her and Layla, which was a really good time. Took them fishing on Saturday. So the bye week served its purpose and got to spend some time with my daughters. But my 7-year-old had 2 new jokes for me. Why did the cow learn to play the guitar?
I got nothing.
He wanted to be a musician. When your 7-year-old daughter says it, you have to laugh. Second one was how do turtles communicate? Shell phones. I had to laugh at that too.
She's got a future as a comedian, maybe.
She likes to knock.
She's funnier than her daddy is. I'll tell you that much.
There's some truth to that. She's a lot cuter doing it than I am.
Well, you almost kind of just bypassed my first question to begin with. My question was going to be, I know your job's never done, but you get a weekend off. It's got to be nice, and it's got to be even better when you can spend it with your family.
We practiced last week, and we think we got better. We did some good things on the practice field, had some young men that improved themselves fundamental and technique-wise, and then we gave the young men the weekend off, and we're going back to work at it today. We actually went back to work at 7 a.m. this morning.
And it's got to be nice for your team to just take a week, get some of those injuries that I know you have that you accumulate throughout the season, just get some of those healed up, and I expect that you should have almost a full complement of players come Saturday.
Yeah, we're relatively healthy. We've been relatively healthy the entire time we've been here for the last 4 years, and we're happy about that. So I don't know how much healed up, but yeah, I think it's more about the mental rest than it is physical rest.
We get to have some fun on Saturday. This is the one when you look at it that everybody circled on their calendar at the beginning of the season and said, this could decide the conference. I know you like to look at it one game at a time, but 2 nationally ranked teams again, one of the perennial powerhouses who's always been at the top of this conference. They got the better of you guys last year, Wesley did. This year they get to come into what should be a raucous Bobcat Stadium come Saturday afternoon. How do you flip the script and turn the tables on them this week?
Wesley's a good football program, been good for a lot of years. They didn't hit the lottery to win 10 games a year for the last 15 years. They're good and they're consistently good. They have good players. They have good coaches. Mike Drass does a nice job as a head coach. Chip Knapp, their offensive coordinators, is good offensive coordinators there is in Division III football. I'm a big fan of Chip's, but does a great job for them. Anyway, you asked about us changing things around. We have to just go out and play on Saturday. Can't think about last year. Can't think about 2 years ago. We can't sit around here and think about what the score was in 1993. We have to go out and play in 2017 and do our thing. Dan, we're talented enough that if we come out and execute and play a clean football game, we're good enough to beat anybody in the country. And as the head coach of Frostburg, it's all you can ask for.
The real battle, when you look at this game on paper, has got to be the high-powered Wesley offense against your defense. You look at that front four, they've been dominant for the most part this year, as they were last year. What does that defense have to do for you guys to come out with a win against Wesley?
Yeah, we sell some young men short when we talk about just the front four. Are we good up front? Yeah, we're good up front, and we've been good up front for the last 3 seasons. And those young men do a nice job. But our linebacking core is a bunch of good football players. Our DBs are good football players. We are good here on defense because we have between 18 and 22 players that fly around. They execute the scheme that Coach Kelling gives them to execute as a defensive coordinator. They execute his scheme at a high level and with an intensity and a pace that a lot of teams we play aren't used to seeing. Now you ask, the big matchup. The big matchup is when they're on offense, our defense. But when we're on offense, our offense versus their defense, and then we have to win on special teams too. And I hate to dumb it down and make the interview completely vanilla. But the team that wins 2 out of 3 phases on Saturday over a 2-hour and 40-minute period is going to win the football game.
What do you do then offensively, too, when you look at it? The offense has gotten better, much better, I think, from last season. You put up over 30 points against Christopher Newport in what was just a chaotic game. You put up 24 again against Rowan. The offense has definitely started to click here as you've gotten into conference play, especially in those 2 road games. What does the offense need to do against Wesley, who's not known as a great defensive team?
Yeah, we should have been better this year than last year because we returned almost every single player. So we should be better, and we've added some pieces to the puzzle. Explosive players at the running back and wide receiver position to help us be better. We talk about Wesley's defense. Wesley hadn't given up a point in over a month, Dan. I don't know if you knew that, but they're playing well on defense. We're playing well on offense. That should be a good battle. Their special teams are good. Our special teams are good. That should be a good battle. And you mentioned the chaotic Christopher Newport. Each week this thing goes on, Christopher Newport gets a little better and a little better and a little better, and Christopher Newport may end up being a conference title contender at the end of this.
Now we mentioned special teams, and there's one individual I want to talk about who's become a big factor in special teams. What a start to the career of Chad Gleason returning kicks. It's been phenomenal for him, and he's kind of stepped in for Russell in a way, and has given you guys great field position on almost every return.
Yeah, I said a couple of weeks ago, I thought last year in the recruiting process, there's a bunch of Division I players coming out of the DMV area and going different places. I thought Chad was the best pure football player that I was watching on film week in and week out, and got to see him play in person once, and thought his charisma and confidence in himself and his teammates was better than everybody else's in the state. We thought we hit a home run when we signed Chad and got him to school here to play, and now we know that we've hit a home run. Chad is a good football player, and he's as good a kick and punt returner as there is in this conference. And let's see if he can keep it up the rest of the year.
Last order of business. Frostburg State beats Wesley if
we play better than them. Hey, Frostburg State beats Wesley Saturday at 1 o'clock if they score more points than Wesley does over a 2-hour and 40-minute period. Yeah, the football team that comes out and executes, plays the cleanest football game, and plays the hardest for 2 hours and 40 minutes is going to win the football game on Saturday.
I like that answer. Keep it simple.
Thanks,
Coach,
Dan.
Thanks for your time. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks for having me.
I'm now joined by men's and women's head cross-country coach Dale Louie. Coach, it had to be a nice change of pace for you this week. You get to stay home, and we were talking about this before you came in here. You guys, because you're gone every week, when you look at it all season long, if you count cross-country, indoor track, outdoor track, you guys have to log more miles probably than any team in this at this university, so it had to be a nice change of pace to just get to. It's a lot of work, but just to get to stay home.
It's very great for our athletes in particular. You know, it is a chance to run at home. As you said, we don't have that opportunity very often. A little bit the nature of our sport, you do see a lot more of their friends and things coming out. Consequently, the family members are pretty loyal and track after us all around the countryside. We really appreciate that. But the friends coming out is always nice to see.
So before we get even to the results from the weekend, let's talk about the course up at Maplehurst. How was the course? How was it laid out? Was it were the conditions good? How did it end up shaping up throughout the weekend?
That's something we've continued to work on every year, trying to make it flatter and faster, which on a hilly terrain is not easy to do. I think we're getting there on the women's course. The top times there on the women's side, were very solid times. Those were very good runners that placed first and second there. The men's course is probably still a little bit. I'm not sure it was much faster than last year, other than it was much drier this year than last year's monsoon.
Yeah, I remember last year that had to be difficult last year. That was probably the most rain we saw at any point throughout all the seasons. It wasn't just here. It was all the teams were down at St. Mary's. They struggled that weekend. It had to be nice to not have to deal with those conditions for once.
Yeah, it makes everything a lot easier setting up and obviously for the runners. I mean, we have a great venue there in the golf course, and they're so gracious in letting us use so much of the golf course, which most golf courses really don't even let you set foot on the golf course. So for it to be nice and dry with that kind of terrain doesn't get much better than that.
Now let's get into the results. Now we'll start with the women this week. They finished fourth out of a total of 8 teams, but you did have some good results in there from girls, specific girls in particular.
Yeah, what's hurting us right now is some of the women that were up front for us at the beginning of the year they've had some illness, they've had some little nagging injuries and things, and consequently, you look at the results. Michaela's kind of up there by herself. When in reality, we probably have at least 2 other runners, maybe 3 other runners that a little bit closer to her than what we've had. On the plus side, some of those people look like they're headed in the right direction in terms of injuries and getting a little bit healthier. We continue to have. This week we had 2 packs after Michaela. Which we really needed. We've got one a little closer to her and one a little further back. Again, as I've said some other weeks, we just need to get those packs up further. And it's my perception, we're going to talk a little bit about it this week, is it's a little bit of self-confidence that they're lacking right now. The recognition that they can do a little bit better, push themselves a little bit more than they have been.
Let's go to the men now. And before we even get into the men's results, I think we really need to talk about Robbie Romano and how impressive he's been. What have you seen out of him? He was very, very good last year, but has made him even a better runner this year.
Well, Robbie, to be a really good distance runner, you've got to kind of live the lifestyle. It's not just all about running. It's about taking care of yourself. Not to demean any other sport, but when you get out there and track and cross country and you step on that track or that cross country course, there is nobody else going to make up for you missing a tackle, et cetera. And it's all on you. And some people can handle that, some people can't. If you want to be on top of your game, it means that you really have to take care of yourself. And Robbie does a good job of that. He's very dedicated to his training. He's very dedicated to the classroom work. I mean, he's dedicated to everything he does. It's just his mindset, and it shows in his academics and it shows in his athletic performance. I thought he did a great job this past weekend because he had actually been sick Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so if you were out there, he hung back early in the race just because he wasn't quite sure how he was going to feel, how he was going to run, and that was all about helping his team out. And then once he got a handle on, okay, I'm going to be okay, he really had an impressive pick it up along the way.
Of course, Robbie finishing third overall. Your men's team as a whole takes first place. Can't ask for much more than that out of your men.
No, and we talked a little bit about this after the race, and I'm going to reinforce it again. Cross country is a team sport, and we just edged out Aldous and Broadus by 2 points. And yes, it was Robbie in third place, but yes, it was 7 other runners getting in front of. Actually, we had 10 runners in front of Aldous and Broadus's number 5 runner, their last scorer. So that displacement was particularly important to us, and we had some people who are starting to understand that this is what we need to do to be a team. And some weeks you're going to be feeling it. Some weeks someone else is going to be feeling it. Hopefully you get one meet out there where everybody's feeling it and you have that real great day.
Now, no rest for the weary. You get right back at it come this weekend. This time you go up to DeSales University in 8K. What can you tell us about, first, the course that you guys will be running there, and then secondly, what teams, what competition you're going to see?
Yeah, the course is tough. In some ways, it's probably as tough as our home course. I think, as I said last week, we've got a string here where we have a tough course, and maybe not so tough of a course next week down at Hood, but it's going to be the 4th race in a row. So it's going to be a challenge for our people. We ran there twice last year, once on the same weekend, and then we ran there at the Mideast Regional meet. So for our returners, particularly those in our top 7 last year, they're very familiar with this course, and that's going to be a plus because it is a challenging course. And right off the bat, you go off the start line and you run uphill for basically a half mile. So you better be warmed up, and you better be having your thinking cap on. Otherwise, you're going to really pay the price.
All right, Coach. Well, thanks. Best of luck to you, both the men and the women, come the weekend.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm joined now by men's and women's assistant soccer coach Glenn Butler. Coach, you get to step in this week for a couple games. Keith out on personal leave. You step in for a couple. You start with Shenandoah midweek. A good game, a game that your boys really, when you look at Shenandoah throughout the year, a game that your boys should win. You come away with a 2-0 victory over the Hornets. What do you take away from that? Because you get 2 goals up on the board, but the offense still looked like they didn't fully click. The one goal that really comes to mind where the offense did look good was Josh's, and you need to see him start finishing. He needs to be putting the ball in the back of the net. What do you take away from the offensive output against Shenandoah?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a good result to win the game, but as you say, there wasn't really enough chances created. Josh's finish was a good one. Definitely take a positive out of that. But at the end of the day, we're coming back to the issues we've had possibly for the last couple of years, is that we don't break down teams well enough to sit back and park a bus against us. And so that's something that we're definitely trying to work on as we go. Obviously, great possession stats. I think we had about 80% of the possession throughout the course of the game. But again, it's the connections in between. Where can we find those combinations to play behind? And do we have players that are out there capable of taking the risks to help us break down those teams? And the honest answer Wednesday was no. People weren't willing to take those risks.
You talk about the possession numbers, and they were dramatic. There was a drastic difference in who really controlled the pace. I mean, you guys controlled the pace of play throughout the entire game. It's got to get frustrating eventually when you hold the ball for so long and you can't really find the breakthroughs you're looking for. What do you do as a coach in mid-game adjustments to try to break down a team that's sitting 9 men behind the ball?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, for Shenandoah, we were kind of already concentrating ahead to the next game towards St. Mary's. So a change of formation was somewhat out of the question. We had goals up, we were winning. I saw no point in changing things at that stage to a different formation to try and break them down. I wanted us to continue to work in a formation that we're more likely to use throughout the course of the year in order to become more accustomed to that. Obviously, we played a couple of players in positions they're not necessarily accustomed to. Obviously, Blake got a little bit of time up front, for instance, just to try something. It didn't work. But again, he only had a couple of minutes there to try something. I mean, going ahead, a change of formation is something we will certainly be looking at. But right now, we're still trying to gel what is essentially a half new team with 15 new players in this season. And still trying to get them all to gel and get that team chemistry together. A lot of these players aren't used to playing together yet. We have a lot of different ages within the team. We've not been helped by a couple of injuries here and there either. But at the end of the day, that's no excuse. And all the boys are together. They know what we have to do. It's just a case of, can we? We think we can. It's just going to get to keep on working within our training sessions now going forward. Make sure we get every last little minute out of that in terms of the options we're going to use going forward. And then, of course, leading into that, we have to be a lot more solid at the back.
Let's talk about the St. Mary's game then from over the weekend real fast. A 3-1 loss to St. Mary's, but it was a bit of a weird game. The cards were flying left and right. It was an extremely physical game. St. Mary's takes the lead. Your boys answer back quickly, and then St. Mary's strikes again very fast. The physicality is something that we're used to seeing in the men's game. I don't know if we're used to seeing it to that extent, but it seemed like there was something that St. Mary's was able to do that was getting under the skin of your boys Saturday.
Unfortunately for us, this weekend, it was 3 mistakes and 3 goals for us. There's some rather ambiguous play throughout, and unfortunately, it was just one of those things. Like, those are mistakes that cannot happen, and we suffered as a result of those mistakes last year as well. And it's something that's, again, it's those little lapses in concentration. This is such a competitive conference that every mistake will be punished. And we've gotten goals this year as a result of mistakes from other teams. And unfortunately, our boys have failed to learn that lesson. Silly little mistakes here and there in terms of timing of challenges, speed of approach. And again, for some of them, it's a learning curve, especially for some of the freshmen that have come in now against these college players. And I give St. Mary's every credit, to be honest, with the way they counter-attacked us. They did very well. They moved the ball very, very quickly. And, I mean, Alan at St. Mary's is a great coach. And he's got those boys playing very, very well. But at the end of the day, I feel the result could have been different had we not made those mistakes.
I want to talk about 2 points to the St. Mary's game real fast. First, I want to talk about, you already mentioned the young players on your team. I mean, we don't see this out of a lot of teams. You look at your starting lineup from Saturday. You had 6 freshmen in the lineup. 6 freshmen that are quality players who have seen a lot of time for this club. And how do you think that pushes the upperclassmen, knowing that they have that competition below them, that there's no guarantee you're going to be on the pitch every day?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I'm very, very happy with, to be honest. I have complete trust in those freshmen that started. Obviously, Will McComber getting his first conference start this weekend, and I was very, very happy with him, to be honest. I don't remember him making many mistakes at all, if any. Kept the ball very, very well for us in that number 10 position, and I thought he was very composed on the ball. Randy Putnam, Andrew DeCarnu, Punya Saliko, Logan Brilio, Sean Lewis when he came in, won both in goal. They've all proven they have the capability to play at this level, and I have every confidence in them going forward as well to continue doing so. Christian Danes obviously started at left back for us, who was a transfer in from FCC, and he's been very, very solid at the back for us this year. Obviously, Sean and Punya give us something a little different in terms of dynamicism. Christian, much more solid in the air, very experienced, already playing against players of this age, physicality. So we have different options. And again, with Logan playing in the centre midfield position, I give him every credit as well this year, because he's had to come in and battle for that place against upperclassmen, and he's worked very hard to try and be the starter in that position. And in coming seasons, he's only going to go from strength to strength, and I have a lot of hope for that young boy.
So let's take a look forward now at what's coming up this week, and it doesn't get any easier for you guys. You have 2 very, very difficult road contests going to Mary Washington midweek. Then you have to make the long drive down to Christopher Newport come Saturday. Let's start with that Mary Washington game. in the middle of the week. First off, that's the tough part, being a midweek road game about 3.5 hours away. How do you prep for that?
I mean, we've done it before. We've been to games already, like with Wesley, for example. We travelled quite a distance, played, and then came home again afterwards. It's not something these boys are unused to. They've been doing it for years for their club teams. It's just the state of the game. It's what we have to do, and that should have no effect on us whatsoever. Again, we know that we're going to play against two teams that are going to be very, very physical again. Unfortunately, that's the nature of our conference, and it's something that we have to deal with. Every team we play against is going to be physical, and it's the way it should be, in all honesty. And what makes this game so great is that every time we go and play somebody, we have to adjust. We have to have a new game plan of some form or another. And yes, these are going to be two very hard games, but we're going to go out there full of confidence that we can get something out of those games. If we go out there with any other different type of mentality, then the games are already lost. So as far as I'm concerned, we'll work hard for Monday and Tuesday for Mary Washington with a game plan. And then after Mary Washington, our focus switches to CNU. And I have every faith that we can get something out of those games.
Well, Coach, thanks for your time. Best of luck to you in the week.
Thank you very much.
I'm joined now by head volleyball coach Becky Fletcher. 2 more matches for you this week, Coach, and we start with the real meat of the schedule being in conference now. We start with Wesley on Friday, back-to-back days, Wesley then Salisbury. So we start with that Wesley game first, a 3-1 win for your girls, and it seemed like for the most part things were really clicking, especially you look at 15 kills for Nia Cheatham, Maddie well over 30 assists again. It seemed like for the most part you dropped one set, but your girls had a very good night against Wesley.
Yeah, we had a really good night against Wesley. I think that we had a great game plan of just going out and trying to stop their 2 outside hitters who have been really dynamic for them all season, and we did that. We stopped their outside hitters. Besides that second set where I think everything went right for them and everything that could go wrong for us went wrong for us, we made some changes and came back and finished the third and fourth set pretty strong.
And something that I happened to be just in the gym midweek, and something that you were really, really focusing on and working on was your blocking, and it seemed like it got a lot better against Wesley than what it had been.
Yeah, it was really great against Wesley. Great blocking doesn't mean you block every ball. It means it's really well set. It means that if you're getting touches, they're positive and they're going up and behind us, so that our defense can play well and set well around our block. And I think that they did a really great job of doing that on Friday.
Let's talk about the Salisbury game now from Saturday. And you don't get the result that you want at the end of the day, but probably one of the best volleyball games from a neutral standpoint that you'll ever see. It was back and forth. You guys took the first set. They came and took the second and the third. You come back with a 31-29 win in the fourth, and it takes extra points in the final set of 16-14. And for it to be in a rivalry, you come out on the wrong end, but that's just got to be a fun game to be involved in.
It was intense. It was fast-paced the entire match. There was never really a lull. Even when we were down, I think we were down by 9 points in the second set, and we came back to tie it up and then eventually fall 25-23. It was fun. The crowd was great, and they were really into it, and our girls were really excited, and there was just this great energy in the gym, and I think we fed off of that for sure. The Salisbury-Frostburg rivalry is definitely something that's a little bit special, and there's definitely some heated moments, and hopefully that our girls learned a little bit, and we're ready for this coming week.
And that's the rivalry is something I want to hit on here for a minute, and you can look at a game like this from 2 vantage points. You can look at it from the sense of you get really, really up for this Salisbury game, and it's so close, and then you come up just short, and that can be maybe a bit of a letdown for your girls. Or you can take it away and say, we played this Salisbury team extremely tough. We were literally 1 point away from winning this game, and you take it as a positive. How do you take what is a tough loss and spin it and use it going forward?
So I asked them before the match to play every point like it's 25-25, and every point like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we're up by 9 or down by 9. We need to play just as hard on every point. And I think if that was our goal for the match, we did an absolute great job with that. They have 2 really great outside hitters. One we weren't able to stop very well. She took almost 100 swings against us, so I guess we stopped her reasonably well. And their other outside wasn't as effective. And we knew those were their 2 go-to players. So we did most of our game plan, and I think it was a really great match because of it. And they played hard. And so I told them after the match, like I can't ask them for anything more if they played their hardest and we stuck to our game plan and we competed. And when the final score, when you tally up the points, they scored 7 more points and it was 7-6 if you tally up those points. So 1 more point. That's all they scored in the entire match. And that's pretty cool and pretty fun to be a part of.
One player that I want to talk about in particular is Biamba Shatange, who had a very good game against Salisbury, 13 kills and a very impressive 7 blocks against the Seagulls. And she came in last year as a freshman as a very raw player for you, and the improvement that she made is just night and day from last year to this year. What kind of growth have you seen out of her that's turned her into what can be a very special player for you?
B hit the weights pretty hard this summer and in the off season, which definitely shows. But more importantly, she just got more confident and comfortable with the players around her. Middles and setters, the tempo of the ball that they're running is so fast that they need to have this great chemistry, and it's not instant, and it takes them a while to form. And when we have great passers like Biamba does behind her, Maddie and KDO can get her the ball more in a pretty efficient way. And she's hitting over people, which is really fun, and she's smart, which is really fun. And more importantly, she's just been really low error for us this season, which is really nice to have in a hitter.
Let's talk now about the games coming up this week, and we start on Thursday with Penn State Altoona, a team that you've already seen, a team that you've seen once this year. You went up to Altoona, took it in straight sets, and now you get a chance to have them come down to Frostburg, and you take it on the road 3-0. You got to expect that the same result is very possible here at Bobcat Arena.
I'd say it's very possible, but I like to not have too many expectations and just go out and tell my team the same thing. We got to play each point the exact same way like we have been all season, and not worry if we're going to win it in 3 or we're going to win in 5. We're going to win each point working just as hard the same way. Penn State Altoona has developed some really great players in the past, and they're typically much better in October than they are in September. So I look for them to be stronger than we played them in September.
The game then over the weekend on Saturday, Southern Virginia comes to Bobcat Arena, a Southern Virginia team that I think has opened some eyes, especially with a win over the weekend against the Salisbury team that was here on Saturday. A Southern Virginia team that I think from last year especially is greatly improved. What do you guys need to do on Saturday to be able to take care of that Southern Virginia team?
So their coach has done a really great job going out and recruiting out of the area. She's brought in a lot of girls from out west, Idaho and Utah and California. So traditionally those areas have great volleyball programs. They have some big hitters. If we are able to stop their hitters like we did 3 of the 4 outside hitters this past weekend, then I think that we're going to do really well. They're not someone we can take lightly. They're someone that we need to come in with just as much as energy and focus as we did against Salisbury, and it should be another really great match here at Frostburg.
All right, Coach. Thanks. Best of luck to you in the upcoming week. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks.